have such dreams, but I could not fall asleep for wondering why the messenger had come to me. My child, I am too old and I am set in my ways, but now I realize just what the voice conveyed. You will be a healer, Rejoice, rejoice, because the healer comes. 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 Your destiny I laid before you, but then the choice was never yours, nor mine. When it's time to take this burden on you, then I will take the one you leave behind.
Oh, I see.
You will be a healer, healer, step by step, by step, by step, by steps grow longer. Till it's just like stepping in another world. Feel that pulse, that pulse, that pulse, that pulse grow stronger. Like a breath coming from another world. just abuse it. Oh, the law is the law. There is no justice outside the law. But if you know the law, you can use it. If you will, then you will. For nothing can withstand your will. As your faith is, so you are. Where your mind is, there you are. Just as urgent follows thought, you can be whole again, be healed again, and make your body fall. You are but flesh, and flesh will obey. You are but flesh, and flesh must obey. Oh, your life is your life. No one else can live your life. And the debts of your life you must pay them. If a man knows the law, he gets help from the law. Only fools fear the law that can save them. If you will, then you will. For nothing can withstand your will.
Drums, what do you play? Voice. Voice and saxophone and flute. Right, so I'm going to start a little bit talking about, saxophone specific things or wind instrument stuff. So when you're thinking about music, what is the first thing that comes to mind that is the most defining of musicality? What's the first thing you think about when you think about music? Like if I want to be musical.
Maybe listening?
Okay. What about if you're playing? What do you think about?
Dynamics.
Dynamics, okay.
Sound.
Sound. To me, it was always sound. So your tone. It doesn't matter what your instrument is. When you hear someone, the first thing that you're absorbing is their tone. Always. So there are certain things that I was doing when I was younger, which I realized later on were helping me in developing my tone. Now, most of the exercises that I do when working on tone are related to how vocalists sing and how string instruments play, for example. So thinking about connecting notes. So not only the one note, but also how to move from one note to another. So we're talking about only one note. I always used to practice very, very soft, like ghost tones. Overtake just the middle of the instrument, the mid-range. So what I'm doing there, I'm trying to push still as much air as I can. My sound is still full, but the note is really soft. And what I'm doing is I'm training my embouchure to control how the note is attacked. So I'm finding that point in my sound where the note is about to start, but I don't let it. And what it does, that gives me the flexibility to change the way I want to play the note. So I can play that same note or I can Now many times what happens when we're playing certain notes on the saxophone, at least, is the voicing. The voicing sometimes is wrong because of the embouchure, because of the tongue position. If I go to the low notes, to the low B flat in this case, many times what happens is this. You get kind of that overtone. Now that is simply because of your tongue position and your embouchure. So when I'm playing these ghost notes, I want to make sure that the start of the note is really clean. So then if I just want to attack it, any way I want. So I do that over the entire range. Even my high notes I play as ghost notes. And for the high notes it's really difficult, so every time kind of you practice them, your body needs to adjust. It takes a few seconds for your embouchure to readjust. So now what happens is that I can control the entire range from low notes to the high notes any way I want. I can attack the note any way I want. So now I'm going to move to connecting the notes, just playing intervals. So I can take just a fifth, for example. Now what I'm thinking about here when I'm playing intervals is how would vocalists sing the interval. It's just tied, everything is tied. Or string instruments, like a little bit of that portamento. So, that we cannot do on the saxophone, but if you think about it enough and you control how you attack the notes, we can kind of get close to it. Now there are a few things I'm thinking about if I'm playing this interval. I'm thinking about how I'm moving from one note to another, so that connection between the notes. And I'm imagining as though when the note is changing, there's kind of a point where the two notes overlap. This is all in my imagination to help me to get to that point where it's as though I'm singing them. I'm thinking about the intonation, of course. Now, what's going to help me to get the right intonation? Now, I know what the second note is going to sound like, but what I'm doing is, when I'm playing the first note, I'm already kind of singing, imagining the second note. This is called tone imagination, and it's very important also for ear training. So the closer I can imagine what I'm going to play next, the easier it's going to be for me to actually play it right. If I go to another interval, fifth again. So what I do is I play that first note as long as possible so that I can prepare my mind for the next note. Now it's important, everything I'm doing here is without tonguing. There's no articulation. And there's a reason for that. Because if I'm tonguing the notes, then I don't know if I can actually control them. Tonguing the notes makes things easier. It's like if I had to play if I tongue it, it's easy. But if my embouchure is not correct, I get that. So I know if it's correct if I don't tongue anything. And now I can control all those intervals with no articulation, and wherever there's a problem, it's going to be obvious. Wherever there's a problem with the embouchure. Does anyone have any questions about this first bit? Yeah.
With like the ghost
tones.
tones, are you like purposely playing the sound with a lot of air? What's the advantage of playing a sound with a lot of air versus like a sound with only sound?
Right. So, if I'm playing a full sound, there has to be the sound of the air because I'm balancing the sound of the air stream with the sound of the note. Do you understand? So I'm using as much air as though I'm playing the true tone, the full note. Now I want to use that same amount of air, but keeping the volume of the note to the minimum. So it's normal that I'm going to hear the air because there's still the amount of air, same amount of air.
If it's the same amount of air, what are you using to control the difference in sound?
Exactly. So, pronunciation. The difference is the speed of the air. Now, what is the difference between fast air and slow air? So if this air is slow, it has to be warm. If you do this on the palm of your hand, how do you warm your hands? It's like that. If you want to cool them, so cool air and warm air. Now, if I want to go from warm air to cool air, so what I'm doing is if you practice that on your palm, you will understand how you should pronounce the air. So my kind of subtone is kind of a downward airstream. And if the air is slow, then my note is going to be soft. Yeah? So that was actually the next thing I wanted to speak about. So it's about pronunciation. The way I think about pushing the air. When I was in primary school, I was in a choir, and we used to be taught this head voice. I don't know if you know this. So how would you describe head voice if you were to explain to someone how to use head voice?
It's your lighter register. It's where you can't belt, and it's almost speaking, more of like a speaking tone than a singing tone.
Okay, so it's in a specific register.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right. So for me, on the saxophone, I'm always thinking about, I want to play in a certain way where I'm feeling the note resonating in the back of my head. It's difficult to explain, but if you had to sing and try to think about this head voice, you would understand that for me it's kind of, the sound doesn't do this, but it does like this. And for me on the saxophone, I still think about that. If I'm playing a low note, it's kind of, I'm opening the spot for the air to do this, and I'm feeling the back of my head really resonating. And that's how I know that my instrument is resonating to its fullest, and my note is the fullest it can be. So for me, on the saxophone, it's mostly the lower register. The higher register, you can do it, but it's less obvious. Like it's the higher register is going to be more of a clear sound, kind of. All right. So, any more questions about tone? Can be about, like, even for vocals, exercises. Maybe it's relevant for the saxophone. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like tension that like builds up in?
Of course.
So how do you combat that?
That's a huge problem usually for saxophonists. So what happens generally is that we try to control the voicings from here, when it's really just your tongue which is changing the voicing. I think loosening your throat muscles is just practicing and thinking about that one specific thing. So I go through phases where I realize I need to fix something in my playing. So I can spend 1 month, and everything I practice, even if I'm practicing the same thing I was practicing before, now my practice is focused on solving this problem. So I can, let's say you're practicing scales. So now you're going to be thinking about playing your scales, but always making sure that you're relaxed. As soon as you feel some tension, you're not thinking about the notes, you're not thinking about anything else. Only the tension. And you will need to do that like for a month, thinking about a specific thing. I never really did a specific exercise for releasing tension. I think that the more you practice, in general, the more confident you are and the more relaxed you become. It's like a few years ago I got a double bass, and on the double bass the problem is like keeping your fingers loose. But you can't just tell someone who's starting off on an instrument, loosen your fingers, because it's difficult. If you're trying to play things, you're going to be stiff. But it's important that you're just conscious about it. So that's why I would practice scales or sing tunes, but only thinking about that one thing. And then it's quite easy to resolve it if it's like that.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, so what else would you think about not sound? Like another thing that is really makes you sound good as a musician, rather other than tone. For me, it's time, like time feel, right? So in time, I don't really mean working with a metronome, which is important. So it's important to know how to work, how to be precise in a tempo. But by time, I'm thinking more about interpretation of the time, how you feel the time. Are there any musicians you have in mind who have a particular way of interpreting time? Doesn't matter what instrument.
Dexter Gordon.
Dexter Gordon. So he's always backward, always. It feels like he's backward, but he obviously knows how to play in time. He knows what the tempo is, but the way he feels the tempo is different from everyone else. And that's why he feels so relaxed. His playing just feels relaxed. So, one thing I like to think about is, let's say you're improvising, let's say you're playing a tune and you're improvising over the progression. The way I practice progressions now, like learning how to solo over them, is a cappella, so just solo. Let's take, for example, ornithology. So, first of all, I'm going to learn the tune, the melody, the head. And to learn the head, it depends on how complicated it is. I'm going to take the smallest bit possible, what I'm comfortable with. And I'm going to play it straight, slow, and slurred. Yeah, so slurred time. For example. I have no tonguing, no swing, and it's as slow as I need it to be to play the notes correctly. Now, once you are comfortable at that certain tempo, you can start going faster. Still no swing. Right? Then I can start putting some swing into it. Still no tonguing, still no articulation. Right. So the articulation I have right now is simply from the keys, finger articulation, and air articulation. Right? So now I'm comfortable playing that bit. I can move on to other bits until I have the whole thing. Now we get to soloing over the progression. So I've listened to it enough to know what it's supposed to sound like. what the chords are supposed to sound like. Maybe you've looked at the sheet, maybe you've just listened to recordings. Ideally, you just follow recordings and you try and figure things out by ear. So, if I'm practicing just a cappella, all the responsibility of making the progression sound is up to me. I'm not relying on a bass, I'm not relying on the chords. So I will start just playing over it and seeing where I like and where I don't like, where is not really sounding right and where is okay. So, if there are certain things that you're still learning in the progression, it's going to be really clear where they are. And I'm focusing on choosing the right notes at the right time. So, if I were to do it slower, if it's a new tune or the progressions are weird, I would, so I'm just going to take the first two chords. I'm going from a G major to a G minor. And I'm going to figure out where the connection, where the change is from the major to the minor. In different positions, which notes should I choose? So if I start from one note and play a phrase, I'm going to get to a certain note at the end of that major. And what am I going to do to go into the minor? Do you understand what I'm trying to do? Yeah? So I do that with like starting and ending at different notes and seeing how to connect the chords. And I do that throughout the whole progression. But always take smaller bits. Things just as much as you can handle one bit at a time. Now, when I'm thinking about my time feel, personally, if I'm playing a cappella, I have a bit of a problem tapping the time and playing. So I prefer to just think about the time. But let's say you're playing with a section. If you're thinking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what you're thinking about and you're playing the progression. You're soloing over the progression. There's a certain way it feels. Your lines are going to feel a certain way. If I go to 2 and 4 and I'm going to play the progression, I'm going to solo, to me it feels different. Right? If I go to 1, 1, 1, 1, right? The way I see it is that if you manage to think about these different feels, the larger the feel, so I'm thinking only 1, the more I feel I want to fill. Whereas if I'm thinking, I can maybe lay back a little bit. So this gives us the opportunity to think in a different way. that we're not always, our mindset is changing throughout the solos. Remember, same if you're singing, if you're scatting, whatever it is. Same for drummers. You might want to start your solo focusing on a certain beat, playing more open, and then playing a different feel. Because we need to give so horn players need to give kind of ideas to the rhythm section, and the rhythm section needs to give ideas to the horn players, to the soloists, or to the vocalists. So the more we think about the tune and the time being something dynamic, the more we're going to bring it to life. And the more we can do over the solos, because imagine taking 10 choruses and we're only thinking, you know? Same with bass players. If the bass is only walking all the time, it doesn't really give that many ideas to the rest of the band. So this time feel, and if, of course, the basis of this is being able to play the tempo correctly. So, for example, over the past years I had to work very much on my up-tempo playing. And over the past year I was recording every concert that I was playing. And what I realized was that I was actually pushing in the up-tempo tunes. I was playing too far ahead. So then, same as we were saying before, I decided, I need to spend maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, just playing up-tempo with the metronome and being as precise as possible. I only focus on that one thing. Any questions? All right, so about technique, there is like a whole system that we can use. It's a bit too complicated to go into it briefly, but for wind instruments, what we do is we have a system where we're working in all keys, and we take small cells or larger cells and we insert them into the system. So for example, just try it, right? And you can do this also, vocalists of course. And I move up an octave. And then, so that is one direction. Moving, ascending triad and moving up. Now I keep the ascending triad and I'm going to move down. And I move down the octave, the whole octave. Now I'm going to ascend, but my triad is going to descend. And the last one, descending and descending. Okay? So I have 4 directions for each one. And in this you can put anything. This is just one idea of the system. Now, you can feel free to develop your own exercises. So use it to work on things that you feel you need to work on. The triads you can work on inversions, like singing within the system, inversions of the triad. First inversion, second inversion. Then you add maybe you want to play dominant seventh chord. Major sevenths, minor sevenths, dominant sevenths. So it's really infinite. The one thing I will say is that, to me, the idea of musicality is more based on tone and time than technique. So technique is really the means to achieving your ideas, but personally I don't treat it as the end goal, simply because if you don't sound good playing one note, you're not going to sound great playing a million notes. And I find that many times it's a bit of a problem that musicians feel they need to play a lot, when in reality they need to play less and just sound good doing less. Yeah? Any questions?
When you're playing, just for example, when you're just playing those triads,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not using any tongue, sometimes when I do stuff like that, I have trouble once I start getting over the break. I say I have to play like a D to an F sharp,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes my sound breaks.
A D to an F sharp, like going down?
Yeah. Like if you're doing it at a fast tempo.
Like that. D,
Yeah.
F sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from the D to the low notes. That's you need to work on that specifically.
But even if you have the perfect voicing on the D and the perfect voicing on the F sharp, how do you work on
That shift.
doing like, especially when you get faster? Like I can do it at a slow tempo.
I would start by separating them. So what you're doing is while you're playing the note each note as long as possible, you're thinking about what your voicing feels like. It's really just a feeling. What does that D feel like? And again, I'm thinking about that F sharp. And now I'm going to start connecting them. Another thing to think about when you're doing these things is the movement of your fingers. That is really important. So I want to smooth that movement as much as possible. Now, in this case, it's much easier to open the keys than close the keys. So it's simpler to play D, F, because you're opening. Understand?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'm going to play F sharp, D, there's more of an articulation on the keys there if I'm closing.
I find it more difficult for me going down.
Yes, apart from that, going down is always more difficult. Always. You need to do more work on the embouchure and on the tongue to descend. Always. Yeah, but that will be what I do. So if I have a problem with larger intervals, separate notes as long as possible, and then start bringing them closer. And when you don't stop, when you're playing them slurred, think very much about how your fingers are moving. And I'm exaggerating a little bit more my embouchure, the shift, if I'm descending.
Is it the same, like if, say you're starting to go into like altissimo, would you also like, say you're playing like a C to a high C or something, and then are you also thinking a similar thing, or like I'm playing the this C with the voicing, and I'm playing this C with the voicing. And that, can you do that without tonguing?
Yeah, the altissimo is really difficult, but still I practice it without tonguing. Still, I'm not that much into altissimo, to be honest. I started really working on it almost 2 years ago, but I really force myself to still not articulate. If you can really get past that, once you start articulating, everything becomes much simpler. For me, the problem still with altissimo is the tone imagination. Really hearing the note, what my note is going to be. Because in reality, someone else in Masterclass last week asked me, how do I work on ear training? But ear training, personally, to me, is just knowing your instrument. So I don't have perfect pitch, but if I hear a note, there's this connection of, this note is this. Yeah, so if I have my instrument, I don't know if it's a C or an F or a G flat. I just know that sound is this position. And you get that just by your body gets used to this position and the intervals. That's all. That's the ear training for me. Anything else? Right, we don't have a bassist, yes, I guess. No bassist. Alright, let's try. Do you want to play?
I would. I don't have any cymbals or sticks.
You don't have the cymbals or sticks. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, any piano? Do you play the piano? No.
I play a little bit.
You play a little bit. Okay, let's do something simple.
I can play something slow.
Yeah, something slow, just like a ballad, an easy ballad, so that I can show a little bit some ideas of how when you are comfortable playing the progression, you can move out. And the important thing about still sounding good is how you're going to resolve things. Anything you want to play? Any ideas?
We could just play Body and Soul.
Body and Soul.
Something
Okay.
easy.
Good. Good. All right. So I'm always thinking of, no matter how far I go from the chord, from the progression, I'm always thinking about where do I have to land. And if I land correctly, if I resolve correctly, whatever I'm playing is going to sound okay. The problem is usually that we want to play out, but we don't know then what we're going to do with it. Yeah? Okay, let's try. All right. 1, 2, 3. Whatever I'm playing that is out, I'm always thinking, where does this progression, where do these chords resolve? Always. And it's it doesn't really matter as long as you know where you're going. One thing I didn't speak about before is, when I was talking about how to work on the melody, is then how you're going to introduce the articulation. So we're doing. So now I can play the melody swing and at a good tempo, and I can control the intervals of the tune without any overtones, etc. Everything is clean. So now I know that I have the control, and I can start injecting some color. And I do that with articulation. And I start maybe try something a little bit different. And you keep doing this over and over with just a couple of phrases, and try and think about different ways of articulating the same phrase, so that then every time you're playing the tune, you're playing the melody, you have this kind of arsenal of articulations that you can inject into the melody, and it's not always the same thing. And also articulating different notes feels different. Not each note is going to respond in the same way when you articulate it. So we're also practicing the control of attacking each note with the tongue. One other thing about tone also is the vibrato. So I don't know usually how vocalists work on vibrato, but what we can do on wind instruments is we take just, for example, a middle C, and I'm going to move down by a semitone, still on the C. Now, what I want to try and achieve is not have it slide. I want all with the embouchure. Now, once I can control that, you can do this with the metronome. So it can be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I can start going faster. I can play like the 8th note. going faster. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And you see how fast you can go, still thinking about that C to B, C to B. Once you're comfortable doing that, you can try going down to the B flat. Now, so you have different depths, different speeds of the vibrato. Let's just try the first bit again of body and soul. And I'm going to think about different ways of using the vibrato. 1, 2, 2. So I can think like deep and slow. And when I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what is kind of the difference in the emotion of the vibrato? So for me, if something is intense, it's usually more. It's a shorter vibrato, yes? It's a faster vibrato. When it's calm, it's. So these are things to think about because they can give so much color to the melody. Does anyone want to sing? Do you know this piece? You want to sing?
Oh,
Yeah?
sure.
Yeah? Okay, let's try. Same thing.
Shall I?
Sure.
Okay.
Is this a good key?
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, George. You can come here.
Yeah, I was just.
No, it's okay. Okay, so try and think about a little bit the tone, some vibrato.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3. My heart is sad and lonely. For you I sigh, for you, German. Why haven't you seen it? I'm tell you I mean it. I'm all for you, body and soul. I can't believe it. It's hard to conceive it, and you turn away romance. Are you pretending it looks like the ending? Unless I could have one more chance to prove to you my life will wreck your making. You know I'm yours for just the taking. I gladly surrender myself to you, body and soul.
Yeah, great. There's also, thank you. Also, another thing to think about is kind of the shape of the melody and the climax, where is the most important part of the melody. What is the difference between the first day and the second day? So the second day resolves, the first day doesn't resolve. So you should play something a little bit different, because there's a reason why they're written differently. And the bridge is so, I mean, it's kind of a big bridge. The change is so clear. A lot of times they say it's the most perfectly written bridge ever. So the way you play the bridge should be very different from the way you play the rest of the tune. Well, these are things to think about, because we want to make our playing as logical as possible. And the more you understand what is happening in the melody, the easier it is to use the ideas in your soloing. So you should always have the melody at the back of your head when you're playing a solo, because we want to use the same, we want to use the shape and what is happening in the melody also in the solos. Great. Any questions? So maybe another tune, another ballad? Just want to close. Do you have your guitar, George? No. Okay.
Boo. Yeah, I can grab it.
You can grab it?
I can grab it, but we'll take a minute.
Okay. Yeah. No problem.
Is there an app?
Probably.
I told them that we should have an amp, but maybe it's not here. Sorry.
Sure.
It's alright. Okay, maybe just one. Do you have?
I don't play so much piano these days.
It's
so
okay.
I don't remember.
No worries.
What about you call one? I see if I know some common ballad.
Like Misty.
In what key?
Just E flat. Do you know this? All right, then you can. Let's do it together.
might be the sound of your hello and music I hear. I get missing the moment you're near, and to see that you're leading me on, and it shows what I want you to do. Don't you notice how hopelessly I'm lost? That's why I'm following you. On my own, as I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hand from my glove. I'm too misty and too much in love, too misty and too much in love.
Yeah, great. So I don't think there's an amp yet.
No, there is.
Other.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
A real guitar player.
What do you play?
Oh, I'm so lucky, Lou, I'm afraid.
Sorry?
I'm so lucky, Lou.
Ah, okay, okay.
You're saving and rescuing.
What do you want to play?
You want to do maybe we're talking about ornithology? You want to?
Ornithology.
Yeah. Okay.
Just give me a second.
It's okay. you. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you for singing. Hope to be back soon. I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to play more. Just started.
Yeah, man.
I didn't miss a chance to play with you.
True. That's true.